Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first day of the 135th NEASC Annual Conference and Showcase called Engaged by Learning. And we certainly hope that this session for you is an engaging opportunity. We hope you find the session full of ideas that you can take back to your own school. We hope you also take the time after this session to look at the expo and maybe the student performance. And then there are some networking opportunities that we hope you'll take advantage of over the next 3 days. So overall, we want this to be a rewarding experience and energizing for all of you. Thank you for being with us. This session, Walk the Talk, how to individualize professional learning, will be presented by our colleagues from the International School of Helsinki, starting with Kathleen Negli, head of school, Ben Thrash, who's deputy head of school, and Rachel Thrash, who is a MYP language and literature teacher and connected learning coach for the school. I'm thrilled to present our session speakers for this Walk the Talk session, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Diane. Okay, hello, everybody. My name is Ben Thrash again. I hope you're doing all right wherever you are in the world. I hope you're having a good day. It is well past daytime here in Helsinki. It's already after 6:30 at night. We've already had a full day of school. We started our day with talking about safety learning and moving our high school students to distance learning and our younger kids on campus and all the craziness that we're in right now. So thanks for taking the time to just connect in, and hopefully in this workshop we'll have a chance to just kind of dive into something that is why we're all interested in education. And we'll spend some time talking specifically about professional learning. So as we get started, I was just thinking, Rachel and Kathleen and I had talked with someone a few months ago about, who was a consultant working with a lot of companies and talking about engagement in a virtual format. And one of the pieces of advice I took away was, he said, so really, if you're going to do something virtually and you're looking for high engagement, you really, more than about 8 people is really not possible to really think about engagement. At that point, you're just basically giving some information, hope people gather, get something. So that wasn't every bit of education right now that's virtual is more than 8 people. And I guess you just have to do the best you can. So certainly that's what we will attempt today. And we hope it goes well. So my name again is Ben Thrash. I'm the deputy head of school at the International School of Helsinki. I've been here for 4 years. I've had the good fortune of working in a variety of different schools, both public and independent schools in the US, and different international schools as well. I was actually thinking coming into this conference that I've worked at 4 NEASC schools, which is kind of funny. The American School of Warsaw, Whitby School, which is in Greenwich, Connecticut. I worked for a long time at Waynfleet School in Portland, Maine, and now here at IS Helsinki. So I'll let Kathleen and Rachel introduce themselves as well to get started.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathleen Negli. I'm the head of school at the International School of Helsinki. And we're really excited this evening to discuss some of the things we've been doing at our school that I think brings professional development to a new level of interest by everyone, because it's all about ourselves and what we're really interested in and what we're trying to achieve as a community. So looking forward to sharing some of our practices this evening. Thanks,
Hi, and
Ben.
I'm Rachel Thrash. Yes, Ben and I are connected. That's not a very common last name. I am an MYP language and literature teacher and a connected learning coach. I also have a side consulting business at cultivating connections that matter, working with different schools to try to bring innovative teaching. And I'm excited tonight to talk about this professional development, because I think it is at the heart of making a school really walk the walk, as Ben so aptly named this talk.
Okay, so I'm going to start by just sharing a quick story that I think kind of captures why this topic is actually something I'm pretty passionate about. I had the good fortune of, like, after teaching for a number of years, I was able to actually take a full year engaging in a master's program in education before I went back into teaching. And I can remember going back to the first school after that experience with just all these giant ideas of what I wanted to do. And coming back into the classroom, thinking about, I was really interested in inquiry and how you actually do that really well, and collaborative learning, and how you prioritize time in the classroom, in the school. And in the first month of the school year, we met with our principal and had to kind of go through our professional goals for the year. And I remember sitting down with her, and I kind of filled out this form and, jotted all this stuff down and all these ideas that I was really proud about, but I was also like, I just had a lot I was thinking about and really excited about. And after sharing this with her, I remember, now she is a very close friend to this day. I remember her saying, okay, Ben, this is the way this works. So what we need to do is I need you to write down several goals here that by May, I can kind of check off and say that you've done this. And that way, because if you haven't completed the goal, then it kind of raises some flags that aren't that great, and we want to avoid that. So I just need you to go back and get some goals down here that we know you can complete this year. And I remember thinking, okay. I remember like leaving that conversation a little embarrassed, kind of like, what? Okay, what? I'd put a lot of myself out there, and I had to kind of like, I'd been a little bit like, chopped down, like, and, after pulling myself together, I was like, okay, fine. I can play the game. Of course, I went back, I wrote goals down I knew I could complete. I did what I needed to, but I kind of realized, I said, okay, I guess my professional learning as a teacher is just going to have to happen outside of school. I can't rely on the school to really help me become better at what I want to do. I'll just do what I need to do to get this done and go through this process, but that's not really going to help me get better at what I want to do. And as I've taught, and then had the experience of being a school leader for the last 15 years in different schools, it's just something I constantly come back to. What are the procedures and processes in school that, with the best of intentions, don't allow us to do and really support people to be the best version of themselves as a teacher? And unfortunately, I think that happens a lot more than it should. And I'm really trying to think creatively about how schools can really do that differently. So that's my story to get us started. What we're going to do is, right now, we actually just want to hear from who's in this group that's interested in this particular session. So I'm going to share my screen real quickly. And when I do that, what I'd like you to do is, I'd like everyone to just go to the chat room that's over on the right, and just post, and in a post, just put this in: your name, school, role that you're doing, and just one question or idea that you're curious about that brought you to the session, just so we get a sense of who's here and try to connect as best we can virtually. While you're doing that, while you're doing that, just to kind of think, what we're going to be doing in this session overall is, right now, just having a chance to kind of connect, think about this topic. I've done this workshop in different ways with breakout rooms and other stuff. They're harder to use within this HopIn session. So instead, we're going to do kind of an interactive thing with Minty.com, which, if you're not familiar with, don't worry. It's a easy way to kind of survey participants, and be kind of have an interactive experience. We're going to do a simulation to kind of think about this topic. And then Kathleen, Rachel, and I are going to share just some work that we're doing at our school, and then have a chance for some reflections and questions that you may have that we can talk some about. So Kathleen, Rachel, you guys see anything with people? Looks like lots of people jotting different things down. Goals for my admin.
I'm seeing someone from Waterbury, Connecticut, which is where my grandmother is from. Seeing people from all over the world. Looking for buy-in, looking for authenticity.
Yeah. Great. I think a lot of people, obviously, how do we differentiate for staff? How do we have the systems in school really develop both teachers and leaders? It is certainly something that I know we talk and think about a lot. And, feel free, if you haven't had our chance yet, just go ahead and post this info, and we're going to move on. But it's good to see the range of people out there and all the places they're coming from, that you're coming from. So as a next step, what we're going to do is, like I said, we're going to actually do a simulation activity. And to do that, the first thing that everyone needs to do is, if you have a phone nearby, you need your phone, and it's very simple. And if you don't have a phone or another device, you'll still be able to follow along fine with this thinking. But if you do, it's a little bit more fun to do. So all you need to do is what's on the screen right there. Get your phone, open any browser, and when you open the browser, just type in minty.com. Right in your browser. I'm going to do this with you guys. So just to see, minty.com. And then you have to put in a code. So 2860134. And then hit submit. And if you did that, what should come up is a thing that says Mentimeter Simulation 1 when improvement strategies assume we're all the same. So that's what mine says right there, which is backwards, you can see. But anyway, okay. So as people are finishing doing that, what the idea of this simulation is we're just going to take a minute and think, okay, instead of thinking about professional learning in schools, what if our goal for an organization was just helping people have the best morning routines they possibly could to be their best self every single day? Something that we all do. We all have a morning routine. We all can relate to it. But if that were our goal, what different ways could we help build skill and build quality in doing that really well? And the simulation we're going to go through just represents two different ways you could do that. And then we'll have a chance to kind of debrief a little bit and connect that to work with professional learning. So let's see here. I'm going to actually unshare my screen, and then I'm going to share one more time this. And so I should be able to move this forward. So like I said, the first simulation, we're going to act like these are just different questions that you would be asked. So this question should pop up in front of you. How do you schedule your time between waking up and leaving for school? What evidence can you provide documenting this? So just imagine if that was a question you were asked, how you might answer that. And then all you have to do is click that thing and hit submit. And looks like some people are figuring this out. Once you've kind of read this, good. So, here, we're going to go through just several different questions like this, if this were the one path of doing this. So next question, preparedness. What supplies do you bring to school each day? What evidence can you provide documenting this daily work? Once you've read that, hit submit. How do you select clothing for the day? What evidence can you provide documenting this? I'm chuckling about how I might answer that question. Okay, one more. Describe your commute to school each day. What would that look like? Okay. So imagine we could have a number of other questions like this, but you get a sense of what this path would look like. So in this simulation, if this pathway was a way that we were trying to do this, this next one just really asks you, what words come to mind describing what this felt like to you? So you should have just any word, write in a word that comes to mind, and then just hit submit. And words should start populating from everyone. Okay. So this is kind of nice. You get a sense of the different people that are popping up there. Efficient, not necessary, organized, pointless, mundane, evidence-based, boring. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to move ahead and move to the second simulation, which would be a different way of trying to accomplish the same thing that we were talking about. Okay. So the second simulation, I think a difference with this is it instead kind of assumes that we're all different from the beginning assumption, whereas that first one really was the assumption that we're all kind of the same. So the first part of this second simulation is just saying it's just telling you, we just want you to reflect on your areas of self-care each morning. And there are going to be a number of statements that pop up and just kind of reflect and think about what those statements mean to you. So this one, time. Personal schedules for morning routines allow you to remember what's important and manage a variety of responsibilities. So click once you've read that. So these are obviously pretty straightforward statements, but I think we'd probably all nod our head to that, or at least most of us, and say, yes, I agree with that. Preparedness. Mentally thinking through your day and preparing necessary supplies helps you respond flexibly and with patience. Okay. Presentation. Clothing that is comfortable and reflects the professional image you want to project to your students and colleagues is important. One more. Managing a commute that lessens stress and provides time for positive thoughts helps you be your best self. Okay. So imagine just like that other activity, we could have 15, 20 statements like this covering all sorts of things about morning routine, but this gives a sample of 4 of them. So if you had a full set of statements like this, and then we're asked, pick 1 or 2 of these categories that you'd like to focus on. What are your goals and how will you pursue these goals? What would that process be like for you? So the second part of the second simulation, a similar thing. Jot a word down, a couple words that come to mind. If the process were like that, what comes to mind? What did that feel like for you? Great. I've done this in several different conferences, and each time it's a little different. The words that pop up. They're definitely different words, right? And certainly the bigger ones are different. I would imagine that if you were interested in this topic, interested in individualized learning, these are, things you obviously, these are things that you do care a lot about. So as that's populating through, I'll just share a couple takeaways for this simulation that I think about, and they may be something that come to you or not, but certainly that first simulation, for me, it does jump out. It's pretty time consuming, pretty detail oriented. I think it could be helpful in some ways. It could help me think more closely about certain things, but certainly not a whole lot of opportunity for investment from me into that process. Kind of makes me a little like, it seems like a lot of like documenting things it just seems like tedious and kind of like, I'm not sure what I'm going to get out of a lot of that. The second simulation definitely allowed for more engagement, allows for more choice and investment, kind of thinking through different things. Where do I want to spend my time? What are the things that actually would help me improve my morning routine, right? I would imagine a lot of you are shaking your head like, yeah, this kind of makes sense. But I mean, when you think about schools and when we kind of compare that process to what the professional learning processes look like in schools, in my experience in the schools I've worked in, professional learning is either the two main drivers are either about accountability or kind of whole school development. And, the accountability measures are usually based in performance reviews, how we really work with faculty. Professional development is often, whole school and really big general experiences that impact everybody. And honestly, both have great intentions, but I don't think either of them do that great a job at actually improving learning of teachers. In my experience, I don't think they're the best way we could spend our time at schools. Accountability measures, they're focusing on the bottom line of making sure that people are meeting a basic, expectation. And no matter how you develop beyond that, if that's what that's what it falls back to, what that process looks like. And all school PD, as important as it is at times, it's pretty scattershot, and it doesn't necessarily connect with different people. And a lot of people don't need it. The people that need it don't really latch onto it because there's not a lot of investment in it. And it's certainly not saying that these aren't two things that are important in schools, but the reality is we have so little time in schools to focus on this work, right? We all know that when we talk about learning and professional learning and learning in classrooms, it's super messy, but it's really hard to do well. And if these processes are the ones driving what we're doing, we're not going to get at what we need to be doing for teachers, which is developing them and supporting teachers to be the best teachers that they can aspire to be. And I feel passionately that the process in school have to reflect that. Really, they really have to reflect that really well. So what I'm going to do right now is we're going to actually share a few things from work that we've been doing at ISH. And then Kathleen and Rachel are going to be able to share some of their experiences going through this process. So as I'm sharing different work that we've been doing, please add questions, comments into the chat room, and we'll try to come back to those as we move through the presentation, have a chance for a Q&A towards the end. So I'll start by just giving a little context for our school, because all schools are different, right? We're an international school in Helsinki. We're about 500 students, pre-K to 12th grade, have all 3 IB programs, PYP, MYP, the diploma program. We have a really transient population of students, really about over 40 nationalities, no major culture here. And our students really do come and go pretty often. So that's kind of the general makeup of our school. We've done a lot of work in the last couple of years of really looking closely at our vision and our mission and really help, those guide what we do as a school. Our vision here, we empower and inspire one another to take thoughtful action, right? Who are we? These are the 3 things that we've really identified: inclusive, challenging, engaged. And what we've come up with are 4 different catalysts that help us kind of put our energy into to kind of how do we do what we want to do. Well-being, autonomy, belonging, connection, and really connected learning, connecting ourselves into the world around us. Those are the 4 areas we see that we can really put our energy into that will help us be who we want to be. So these are things that we say are really important for our school. But why is this really important in terms of looking at professional learning? I think that, that statement, we want to prioritize teacher growth to maximize high quality student learning. I can't think of another thing that schools should be doing more of is in really developing and nurturing teachers to be the best that they can be, because that is the best way that we can support learning in the classroom. And if we really want high quality learning, we have to be, as an organization, know we have teachers, newly experienced, super, veteran teachers. We have teachers all sorts of points in their career, and we have to support all of them to improve at what they're doing. To do this, those 4 points there are something that we've thought a lot about, really inspiring and supporting each other, understanding how students learn and really how people learn, having that inform what we do, and have that really help us develop goals that help us aspire to be our best selves as a student, as a teacher. We spent a good bit of time thinking about what learning is as a school, and actually going through the reaccreditation process in the last couple of years, specifically with NEASC and the ACE learning pathways, where we do a lot of work really looking at defining learning as a school community. And this particular graphic is something that took a long time of a working group kind of working closely to come up with what are we trying to articulate that learning looks like at our school. And you might have to lean in a little bit, but that center part, learning is a journey to consolidate and extend one's knowledge, understandings, and skills to create meaning, is a statement that we worked really hard to come to. And then across this graphic, we have kind of competing attributes that we think are really important: individualized, collaborative, challenging, confidence building. These are kind of tensions that we've identified that we know that all of them are important. And at times we have to lean one way or the other, depending on the student, depending on the context situation, but they're all kind of essential elements of what we see learning as at our school. In terms of the professional lives, we've identified a set of standards that we're kind of saying as a teaching community. These are skills that we all do, kind of like the statements that we were just looking at in that simulation. These are things we can all nod our heads to and say, yes, as a teacher, I do this, right? And this is the work that it holds us accountable to each other, but it also is something we nod our heads to. Yes, this is what my job is. Now, to really engage and grow and learn, we have to really extend beyond that. And to do that, that's when we want to have opportunities for teachers to really dive in and have autonomy over their learning, and ideally be able to really model that professional learning beyond themselves to other colleagues in our community. So that process also involves commitments. And we've talked a good bit about this in our community of what commitments of learning look like. So in this middle graphic, it really shows that what we're saying learning is our community. And on one side, we have the teacher saying that, hey, I'm a learner. I've got plenty to learn. I'm in this environment that with the school really, which is this, right? Inclusive, challenging, engaged. I'm going to make commitments as a teacher, and then I'm going to act on those commitments. And on the other side, we have students going through a similar process, right? I'm a learner. I'm at this school. I'm making commitments. I'm acting on it. And where that meets is where the learning is taking place. And as a school community, if we really believe that learning for students is this process, then for teachers, we have to really reflect that in the process we've have developed for teacher learning in our school. So this sort of graphic in terms of teachers coming at it from the other end, it's also the school. What processes are we putting in place to support and meet teachers so that learning is happening and that teachers can really feel safe to grow and develop as a teacher? This particular graphic is way too much detail, but it shows just some of the messiness that we've been kind of playing with, where we dive in and have really tried to think more specifically, what does this look like when we say commitments for teaching or actions for teaching or learning? But it's helped us to kind of define that even more clearly and explicitly for both teachers and students. So in our professional learning community, this is a good bit of text, but it helps kind of just guide through what this process really, how it plays out in our school. So one, we go into every year, like most schools, really affirming certain initiatives that we feel like are really important for our community that we're going to be working on. And in doing that, we really invite teachers to then engage and think about that. And oftentimes those initiatives aren't at all out of the blue. They're coming from work we've done over the last couple of years. Those 4 catalysts that I mentioned at the beginning are what's driving our learning as a school, not only for students, but also for our teachers. We then ask teachers to really reflect on this and select goals, and select actually learning goals and then actions about how they want to pursue that ideally fit under the umbrella of the initiatives that our school is saying is important. Because in the end, we are all in this together at our school, and we want to be able to support each other and work together on what we're doing, even though we might have a vast array of different ideas of how we're developing individually. We also really think it's important that teachers actually, it doesn't live internally in what you're doing, but there has to be opportunities to share what you're saying and say, yeah, this is what I really want to be doing, and these are some ideas about how I'm going to do this. So that's a process. Once people kind of set these goals and their actions of really outwardly making that claim to colleagues. What then happens is we then look at all the different goals that our faculty put out there, and we typically will form kind of collaborative cohorts that have kind of similar like-minded inquiries where faculty can work together. Sometimes what the people are working on is very individual and kind of focused that way, or small groups. So we really individualize the process to best meet where teachers are. We then provide a good bit of time over the course of the year for teachers to either pursue their individual or collaborative interests and support them in different ways through connections with other colleagues and with other members of our leadership team. And then we provide opportunities to kind of reflect on that throughout the year. We also know that, professional learning timelines, like what I described in my story at the beginning, they rarely go from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, right? I've got things I've been working on for 20 years and I will continue to work on. And I've got some things I might work on for 2 months and say, yeah, okay, that was interesting, but I'm ready to do something else. So the timelines are going to vary, and we build in some flexibility with what that looks like. The reality is we do kind of live on a school year schedule. So there are things that we want to take advantage of that, but it doesn't mean that everything's wrapped up at the end of the year and you're ready for something new the next year. Oftentimes you're going to continue that work for several years if that's where your real interests are. But at a certain point, we really want to make sure that teachers are reflecting and actually exhibiting their learning with colleagues. And that's why we provide a lot of different ways. And this is work that we're doing right now to support teachers to do this and share what they're doing in really authentic ways. Sometimes it's just through professional development workshops within our faculty. Sometimes it's encouraging people to present or share outwardly. Maybe it's blog posts. Maybe it's, joining some sort of book group. There are all sorts of ways that allows you to share that learning in a way that feels comfortable, but is also important and meaningful to be able to do. Because we know as teachers, for students, that's a really important process for them, to be able to not only have this individual process in their head, but to be able to share that out with others. So this process in our school, we're constantly trying to do more of is what's on the right. How do we emphasize this more? Because those things on the right are the things that, honestly, that's what this conference, I'm sure, will come up many times in this conference, right? It's what we know is best for a classroom learning environment, for students to have opportunities to really be invested in what they're doing, to make goals, to get targeted feedback, to kind of tailor their experiences that are actually meaningful for them. All of these things are what we're saying is important for students, but oftentimes in schools, they're not the systems that are built up to support teachers to do the same work. And they have to be, if we actually are expecting teachers to grow and authentically want to get better, which teachers want to do. That's why, that's anyone wants to get better at what they do, but they have to feel that process. And schools have to best support that so that over time, there is that culture that you're establishing in your community of what learning feels like and looks like. This is just an example of just in this current year, over the last couple months, these are initiatives that we put out in front of faculty to start the year this year, things that we knew we were thinking about, some by choice, some not so much by choice, in terms of just everything that's happening in the world with safeguarding learning. We also had identified these major learning plans underneath our 4 catalysts, specifically developing individual learning plans for all members of the learning community. And in doing that, really ask teachers to reflect on these, to come up with their own inquiries as they started into this school year, or were coming back from what they were doing last year. And just a couple of weeks ago when we came together, these are some of the things that came out, right? So this is all generated from faculty having complete autonomy to make these choices. They focused in on the things that we are really thinking about: individualizing learning, social emotional learning, inquiry and assessment, agency and action, equity and inclusion. And that column on the left really represents a lot of the individual or maybe partner inquiries that some teachers knew they wanted to spend time developing. So there's a range there, but there's also a lot of commonality and purpose that as a school we're really trying to support and develop. So it's a lot of me talking. And what I want to do now is actually give Kathleen and Rachel a chance. I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to unshare the screen. And I'm going to give Kathleen and Rachel a chance just to share for a minute about their own experience. One, Rachel is a teacher going through this process the last several years, and reflections of how that's impacted her. And then for Kathleen as head of school to really talk about how the impacts on our school community that she really sees are really powerful. So Rachel, do you want to go first?
Sure.
We can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me? Can you?
Now we can.
Okay.
Now we can.
So I think the most important aspect of this is the conversations that you started off explaining that are happening in the wider school community. Because I think just like a good classroom, when you say to teachers, you can do anything you want, what are you going to pursue? That can feel too big. And I just want to clarify that this isn't that. It's saying we as a learning community, we have a mission, we have a vision, we have some agreements about what makes good teaching and what we commit to do to with our students. And I think when you start with that, then you give teachers an opportunity to really reflect on where they can grow. And that process is so exciting because you're doing it with your colleagues and it's leading to collaboration, even when it can be individualized. So I'll give a quick example. A few years ago, I was moving into the position of service as action director, which was new to me. And I was really eager to consider how I could create some service opportunities within my curriculum, a typical goal that might come out of professional development. But because this was part of our mission, this led to some conversations, and certainly it led to some conversations even with a veteran teacher who had been around about 25 years at the school, and he had a bit of an attitude of, I've seen initiatives come and go. This is the latest initiative. I'm going to just sit back, do the things I do well, and maybe not dive in. But because of this process, because of our mission, he had identified, I'm going to try to consider, I don't really believe in interdisciplinary teaching and learning, but I'm going to try to consider it. I'm going to make that part of my goal. And this overlapped with my goal, and we had the opportunity to work together. And the freedom to work together and explore, and with me having this goal of thinking, how can I bring service and make it real to every person, and him with a goal of, I'll try interdisciplinary teaching, we came up with some of the most exciting teaching that I've ever done. Building a resistance art cafe down the street from our school. And he came up to me at the end of that and said, I have goosebumps. I've never had a night like this. And I think a lot of that is these goosebumps moments can come from the freedom this sort of goal setting allows. And certainly not the box checking and the, I know I'm a good teacher. I mean, this man could justify his good teaching over and over again, but the fact that this kind of a program can still get veteran teachers thinking, learning, and growing is what we want, and what we want to model for students.
Thanks, Rachel.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. Kathleen?
Yeah, so let me talk a little bit from the head of school point of view. And I know that there's some administrators in our audience, and they're wondering, okay, that's really great, but how do you create this accountability? What about the teachers that not, working hard enough, and these sorts of things? And in my mind, I want to put that aside. And we're talking about something else. We're talking about a teacher having a deep passion for pursuing something that we're all working on together, and how they pursue that. So this past year, when we started this school year, many of us, like many of you, were energized by the Black Lives Matters movement. And we saw that as a school, we needed to do something more. We need to take further steps in what we were doing. And we had a student equity group get started on some work, and we had a teacher group. And what we found out as we were getting to the point of talking about professional learning that came up a little bit later in the year, so many of my members of that staff equity group that we formed ended up choosing goals that went along with that. And one of our major points of our mission is to be inclusive. And we wanted that to be understood, that this is the most inclusive of the word itself. And what does that really mean? And how do we dig into that? And we found in those groups that people develop individual goals. So I would have teachers say to me, Kathleen, I want to do better at bringing diversity into my classroom. And then we'd have coaching sessions and the dialogue in that group and talk about, okay, that sounds great, but let's talk about like something super specific or a piece that you'd like to work on right now. And we had some students, or I'm sorry, we had some teachers talk about, they wanted to take a look at their curriculum and literature. So we began a lower school review of the literature that we have for our readers. Are they inclusive enough? Do they represent the different communities we have at our school? And what we found is that we had this common excitement together. And what I believe as a school leader of this lessening of hierarchy, that if they can see that I too am a learner in this, and that we are modeling this, that we're all learners, we're trying to find out, and we're trying to do better, what might that look like? And I could show my vulnerability in this as well, saying, you know, I've done these sorts of things, but I want to do better too. What might that look like? And have them also articulate what they think me as a school leader should be thinking about in this dialogue. So what we've created is this very supportive process where people are not dreading the normal process of, you know, ticking off something and the documentation and all these other things that many of us and most of us have experienced. Ben talks about his early years. I remember when my first goal setting, I was working as a geography teacher, and I had to create a very specific goal, and it was somehow I was creating some kind of updated map for my classroom. Such a limited goal. What I'm aspiring for my staff and for myself is to really have transformational experiences. And we talk about this vision we have, that we want to inspire and empower thoughtful action at our school. So what does that take to inspire and empower action amongst our staff? And that's the community we're after. That's what we're building at the school. And it feels good when we're in this process. I don't dread doing professional development. Actually, it's some of the best experiences I've had as a school leader, to sit down with others and talk through their wonderings, and for us to think about what next steps might be and how wonderful and exciting that can be for a teacher that's maybe been teaching for 30 years like myself, or someone who's just at the beginning of their career.
I think it also opens up a conversation with our students. If we are modeling to our students that we are learners as well, when your professional development includes how you teach them, I'm often very open with them about what I'm trying to do in my professional development. And it's often goals that have to do with working with them. And so I can say this to them and I can say, what do you think? And I can get feedback from them, which frankly, I mean, while I love my administrators, the feedback from my students is much more relevant in some cases. And so they see lifelong learning taking place right in front of them, and they can help me understand what I still need to work on.
I would just add that part of this is letting go. If you are an administration, that to give power to somebody is to give autonomy. And Diane Ullman wrote that this is bounded autonomy. So the bounding is that we're moving forward as a learning community, and so that's the focus. So we're not having a teacher's goal to, I don't know, become a lawyer or something on the side, which might be a personal goal for them, but it won't be the goal or the inquiry we're working on together at the moment. So that means giving freedom to others, and for many administrators, that's terrifying. I'm not so terrified. I know that, of course, there will be some teachers who will not participate in the level that we would possibly want. But maybe next time when we go through this round, they'll choose something that feels better for themselves. And we can see that some of our teachers that were reluctant last year are really buying into this year. So it's this journey we're on where it feels trusting, and that we're not going to be slamming them later on and saying, oh, you didn't do this part of your goal setting.
I think that piece, though, is a big part of it, because leadership in schools have to be comfortable with that level of letting go and things being a little messy and a little bit harder to hold everyone accountable. And I think the same thing happens in a classroom. If you're throwing out an idea of let's do something kind of interesting and different, and you're not as directly involved in leading every step of the way, that it gets messy, right? Really quickly. And that certainly happens at our school, at any school we've kind of done this work in. But to me, to make it less messy, you've got to build in a lot more different things that then are driving that. Then before long, you're really focusing on, and if you're really worried about the ones that maybe are going to slip through the cracks, then that's where the energy of the professional learning goes. And it doesn't help the vast majority of teachers that are ready for different things and can really manage and do different things really well and need that sort of investment and autonomy to really be able to grow as a professional. It doesn't mean that you don't have to have processes in place to support all colleagues no matter where they are, because you certainly do. But that can't drive the professional learning process in your school, or else, then it can be a lot less messy and more like on top of everything. But then you're limiting all the people that are ready for something different, and really, in order for them to get better, need to have more autonomy in what they do, because otherwise you're holding people back. And I've seen that happen in multiple schools I've worked in, and feel that you have to be comfortable with that letting go. And I know every school is different, the context you have and the ability to let go of some of that. And I know some of you are in schools right now where that is a lot. It's not just sitting here making a decision, say, we're going to just do this. You've got certain things that are in place through districts or boards or other stuff, but it is something to push against and think, where can we push to actually make some changes to do more of this type stuff? Because it is the stuff that actually will impact student learning, I think, more than anything, in my experience.
And there's some people in the chat room, and some are talking about they have this pressure, they have to improve test scores. And that is, we've gone through a paradigm shift many years ago at our school. Like, that's not our focus. Our focus is this learning journey that each individual is on, each student, each teacher, each staff member. So we want to help wherever that person is at and moving them to the next spot. And I understand many of you might be in this very confining, data-driven, test score-driven world. And my suggestion, if you're in that kind of system and you have some influence, one way to do this is if you have this as a parallel system to what might already be in place. So creating a parallel system where you're helping to create this community of inquiry, and that being a natural place. And maybe it starts off very small, maybe it only starts in the team you work with, that you're helping each other and coaching each other through such a process, and that maybe there gets some buy-in at some point and this grows. So, it depends on the power you have to influence a system. But I always say, even if you're just an individual teacher, it can always just start with you, that you as an individual teacher can go through such a process that, like Ben said, I'll have to do my PD outside of school. And that might be where you're at based on a very traditional system. But if you are on the precipice of changing to something much different, to real 21st century learning, all that we've been hearing about, then this is the direction that you're going in. You're going into this autonomy that's building upon the mission and vision of a school that is meaningful and that feels meaningful to all learners in the school, not just students, not just teachers, all of us. Because when we're leaning into that, then we really are empowering and inspiring each other.
I think about this piece as well, that, for those of you that are doing this work and have thought a lot about this work, I think to do this well, I keep comparing it to what happens in the classroom, but I think to let go of some things and then have a lot, isn't it all less work? In a lot of ways, it's a lot more work, but it's more behind the scenes work and preparing work, so that when you have the time that people are able to collaborate, you're best able to really maximize use of that time. Just like you're thinking about in a classroom, where all the things you do to kind of support a really collaborative learning environment. So when that when those moments happen, everything's in place for it to kind of go as well as it can, right? And I think that's one of the things we found, that to do this does require a lot of, it's a lot of individual conversations, and it's a lot of, I think the approach to each individual definitely involves knowing each individual and using the full community to connect in and support each other. And that, I can say that takes time in schools to develop that culture of really being able to be supportive and really want to, not only support, but challenge those around you in really positive ways.
And we had a wonderful diversity consultant who we'd been working with, Darnell Fine. He was talking about the work he was doing, and that, why he found it important. And he said that, this is freedom work. And he was talking about in the realm of diversity and inclusion and equity. And I thought, how powerful of a statement that is for all of us, though, because what we're doing in schools, when we're leaning into this kind of process, this is freedom work too, that we are truly giving the freedom to become the person that you want to be as a teacher, to develop your best self. And that again is about a release. I can't control that, nor should I try to control that. I can only empower that. I can inspire that. I can charge that. I can bring excitement to that for another person, if you're in leadership or you're just a colleague. So I think as we move into the next, era of school learning, this is freedom work. We're removing the chains that we put on children and school systems that have bound us into these very strange processes. And this is a breaking free of those kind of processes and say, let's do it right. Let's really do what we're meant to do.
I think that's a great statement to try to end on. So we really appreciate everyone for participating and adding comments and questions. I hope that today and tomorrow you're able to, really engage with the questions and topics that are relevant for you in your own professional inquiries. We hope you've at least taken a few questions or ideas or things that you heard one of us maybe say or talk about that said, oh, that made me think about something a little differently, or I'd like to think about that, or I'd like to, all of the stuff that we shared is accessible within the conference framework to go back and look at. So thank you very much for attending our session, and we hope that you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.